Would you watch a Jackson Mahomes and Juju Smith-Schuster TikTok collaboration? I sure wouldn't. It's time for garbage time. Guys, welcome into Garbage Time Fantasy Football. Tonight, me, Ryan, and another guest. The ghost of Ron Seymour is joining us tonight to give us his best advice. How are you doing tonight, Ryan?
Good. I think people are going to start to think that Ron doesn't exist because he's been MIA for a while.
Yeah, he's here with us in spirit tonight, too, and we'll be asking for him for a little bit of advice. So, yeah, guys, if you like what you see here on Garbage Time Fantasy Football, feel free to like the show and subscribe here on YouTube. Also, if you like to listen in podcast format, feel free to listen on Iheartradio, Tunein, Spotify, Google, Amazon, Apple, and also you can leave us voicemails or hate mails on www.garbagetimeff.com. So let's get into what we got for the show tonight, Ryan. We're going to do a continuation of free agency tonight, and we have some trade drama to get into, I think, for the heckling fandom, right?
All the trade drama.
Okay, what do you want to lead off with? Do you want to get into some news, or would you like to get this trade out of the way?
Let's just jump right into the trades. I feel like the trades are the news.
Yeah, no, for fantasy football, it's got to be. What do you think, Ghost of Ron Seymour? Oh, he's still silent. Maybe you'll get back to us.
Yep, he's not here. he's napping someplace.
Yeah, in his spirit, lazy boy.
That's right. All right, so what trade should we talk about first? I mean, did we ever get the... Oh, did you just add that to the stream?
I did. I pulled it up for you. See,
all right.
I'm your boy. I got you.
We want to do our sleeper trades.
Guys, what we're doing down here for you is Ryan had a few offers this week in our Dynasty leagues, and we want to give you some off-season Dynasty content because obviously this is a little bit of a slow season for fantasy football at this point. We've got free agency stuff that we can talk to that we're going to get to shortly, but you're still looking to make trades this time of year, especially in Dynasty formats too. And you got to start thinking about this kind of stuff. So, Ryan, why don't you pull these trade offers up for us and tell us what you got for us this week?
Yeah, I could definitely do that. Give me 1 second here. Let me zoom in a little bit so you guys could see what I'm talking about. All right. So
1 second, I paused for you twice already.
So are you able to read that, or is that like way too small? Let's see.
We're good. Lay it down for us.
Okay, so Ron sent me a trade. He wanted me to send him DJ Moore and my 2022 first round pick. This is in Dynasty. For Stephon Diggs and a 2022 second round pick, because Ron has about 500 of them. I didn't think the trade was that off. I just think DJ Moore is still really young. He's the best wide receiver on that team. Obviously, the quarterback situation is kind of up in the air. But on the flip side, you also have Stephon Diggs, that's 28. Still had a great season. Will still have another great season, I'm sure. Probably a couple more after that. But you do have to look at age a lot when it comes to Dynasty. So I rejected this one. I countered. Go ahead. Nope, you can. What do you think of that offer?
Well, initially, I think in regular fantasy formats, Stephon Diggs is obviously more valuable considering the offense he's on in a redraft league. But this is a Dynasty league where you're looking at 5 more years of having potentially an elite wide receiver, depending on the quarterback that comes in there with the Panthers. I don't think I would make this trade straight up for the reasoning that you're giving up a first-round pick, and I understand you're getting a second in return, and you have a later one. But you're getting 5 more years of viability on your end of this trade. I think before I would make this trade, I would want to see at least who's coming in to play for the Panthers. Because at this point, it's looking like a rookie, but there's still veterans out there like a Baker Mayfield and a Jimmy Garoppolo. So I think that's interesting aspects to look at it. So why don't you tell us what you countered in this?
And my logic also was this is a super talented rookie draft class at wide receiver. So, I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to get Stephon Diggs, but you could definitely get some talent there. So I countered with Stephon Diggs for DJ Moore and a third-round pick, which Ron instantly denied and said trade negotiations were over because it was just so insulting to him.
Come from the guy that traded me 3 first-round picks.
Right. Again, I don't think that was a bad trade. I think it comes down to where you think DJ Moore is going and how much you pay attention to age. He's 4 years younger than Stephon Diggs. It's time to find out what quarterback they get. I'm hearing that they're not interested in Baker at all, so that makes me think that they're going to make a run at Jimmy G, but who knows? So he rejected that one as well, and that was the end of those negotiations.
Yeah, this is kind of interesting, and I do actually like this trade on Ron's end. I would have taken this trade, especially in Dynasty League, but again, this is where I pause. I want to see who's playing quarterback for him before I actually make this trade. I think Stephon Diggs would immediately help you win more this season, but DJ Moore is so much younger, and he's very talented too, and hopefully he's not going to be playing with Sam Darnold this year, and I believe that's going to be the case. I think they're looking to move on from him. So from a dynasty standpoint, I actually like this trade on Ron's end a little bit better than yours, but it's a pretty even trade, and I can see why you want to do because you want to compete this year.
Right. So fair offer. So now I'll get into another tough guy to trade with is good old the commissioner himself, JJ LaPlante. So JJ offered me, we went back and forth several times. Oh man. Yeah. Okay. So initially he offered me Ramondre Stevenson, Joshua Palmer, and a 2023 second-round pick for Antonio Gibson. For me, this wasn't much of a debate. Ramondre Stevenson's on the Patriots. He's stuck in a committee. They always do committees. They're very unreliable. Joshua Palmer, he's a young wide receiver, but I'm pretty stacked at wide receiver. So unless it's a big name like Stephon Diggs, I'm not super interested. And then 2023 second round, I don't. So that was the initial trade. So then I countered with.
Let me break this down before you get into that really quick.
Yeah.
So while I think there was very interesting throw-in pieces here because Ramondre Stevenson is highly talented, but behind Harris currently. But that is an interesting throw-in piece for any trade. So
you also have James White on that offense now.
That's true. It's a running back by committee, unfortunately, but in Dynasty League, still an interesting throw-in piece here. But like I said, still a throw-in piece. Under that, we have Joshua Palmer, who would have been a lot more valuable if Mike Williams would have left, but unfortunately, he's got a new 3-year deal with the Chargers now too, so he is now demoted to the third wide receiver of the Chargers. Not completely useless in Dynasty Leagues considering how high volume that offense is going to be, but also still currently a throw-in piece. And that second-round pick next year, I believe, could be valuable because it's going to be a deep draft. So good pieces here, but I don't think it's enough to get the running back from you. So this is what you countered, correct?
Yep. So then I countered with, this was kind of my low ball. I offered him Cordell Patterson, who re-signed with the Falcons, and Antonio Gibson for the second pick of this year's draft.
So completely out of left field and different offer.
He quickly rejected it, which is understandable. Cordell Patterson, we saw him take a huge dive towards the second half of the season. It'll be interesting how that works out this season. However, they are now without a quarterback, so maybe Cordell Patterson will be quarterback, wide receiver, running back. Who knows?
If you were absolutely dying for running backs, this wouldn't be an absolutely bad offer because on your end, you're giving him 2, but there's 2 unsure options here. And Cordell Patterson, as we saw last season, like you said, took a nosedive second half of the season, and I kind of see that forecast happening again. The ghost of Ron Seymour tells people that he is completely off his draft board for next year. And while he's not completely off mine, I'm definitely looking to take him later next year. I completely agree, pretty close with that sentiment.
Yeah. So, JJ then amply responded. He offered me, I think it was the 8th pick of the first round. So the 8th pick of this draft for Antonio Gibson. I denied. I don't think that was a terrible offer. I was just looking for a little bit more. The 8th pitch is pretty late. I know you see first round and you're like, oh, definitely, but the 8th pitch is pretty late. So I denied that. That was probably the one I was closest to accepting.
Okay.
From JJ's trades.
I think for Antonio Gibson, I would have accepted this trade. Honestly, I did like this trade on both ends. This is going to give you a little bit of insight into the rookie draft, but I believe there is 2 quarterbacks I would take up to this range, probably 4 wide receivers and 3 running backs, and I think you can get a talented piece here. And Antonio Gibson, while the number 1 running back in that backfield, is playing with Carson Wentz, who I do not like. And there was a point in the season last year where he wasn't even playing, and J.D. McKissic is now back. Really, he's not a piece I like. A lot of people like him, and he's got potential. But, again, just not a piece I like. Not undraftable by any means. I'm looking at him more in the 4th or 5th round. I think people are valuing him a lot higher in redraft formats. And in Dynasty, he has quite a bit of value because of the age.
Yeah, so that was a fair offer. So then I countered. This is
again.
My
is this your pissed off? This your pissed off reverse trade?
So I responded back for the 7th pick of the first round and Jerry Jeudy for Antonio Gibson. JJ declined that almost immediately. I think mainly I think if Russell Wilson wasn't in Denver, then this trade's pretty close to happening. But Russell Wilson going to Denver, I think Judy's value has skyrocketed. So I don't think you're gonna pry Jerry Jeudy away from JJ unless it's a significant amount. So he quickly rejected that one.
All right, now that we've got that in the bag and, you threw that last one out there to piss JJ off, let's move on to the news, right? So why don't you click that shared screen off for us and we'll get into it.
Well, there's one more trade.
Oh, I'm sorry. One more trade to go over before we get into the next part.
So then I tried to send an honest offer. This one's a little messy. I would have sent Mike. I would have received Mike Gesicki, the 8th pick of the first round and the 2nd pick of the 2nd round. He would have gotten Antonio Gibson and Ricky Seals-Jones.
This trade is interesting. Mike Gesicki, I think, is going to be a big part of that Miami Dolphins offense. I believe his new coach from San Francisco is going to look to use him and utilize him very much so, similar to a George Kittle role. Not saying that, and I've said this in other episodes, that he's as talented as George Kittle, but that is the kind of role they are going to put him into, and that is going to increase his volume, which is very interesting. The picks that you want here might be a little bit of overkill, like I've said, for the running back that you're looking to trade here. I don't necessarily like that running back, but maybe JJ does. Obviously, he was looking to acquire him. So while it's not a horrible trade on his end, there's some interesting pieces in this trade, and I can see why people would make this trade. You don't really have a loser here, I don't think.
Yeah, so those were my 2 days of attempting to trade with the ghost of Ron Seymour and JJ the commissioner. So
speaking of that, let's ask our third guest host what he thinks of that. Ron, what's your opinion on those trades? Thank you, Ghost of Ron Seymour. Now let's get into the news.
News updates.
All right, now we are going to move into the second half of the first week, an early second week of free agency, and there was a hell of a lot of stuff that happened in free agency that's going to affect fantasy football. So let's jump into the first big one, which was Deshaun Watson telling the Browns he was not interested in going there. And then they threw over $240 million guaranteed at him over 5 years. And he said, you know what? I've always wanted to play for the Browns. So, Ryan, what's your thoughts on Deshaun Watson being traded from the Texans to the Browns for 3 first-round picks, a third-round pick, and a sixth-round pick, which was altered later this week?
Yeah, so first things first, personally, I think the Texans won this trade. I do. Deshaun Watson didn't want to play for them. B, they got a ton of trade capital. And I really think what happened was, I don't think Cleveland was planning on throwing the bag like this, but they kind of ticked off Baker in their pursuit. I think similar to what you saw happen to the Falcons. They ticked off their quarterback pursuing Deshaun Watson so hard. So Baker went and requested a trade. So I think the Browns kind of had an oh crap moment and just threw everything but the kitchen sink to try to get Deshaun Watson. It worked, but holy moly, they gave up a lot to do it.
Yeah, like I said, they're mortgaging their future for this. The salary cap is expected to go up, so it may not be as bad as we initially think. And it appears that a lot of wide receivers want to come play for him. Jarvis Landry, who they've cut already, is looking to want to come back and may come back on a smaller contract. Who else was there? There was 2 other wide receivers. I believe it was Antonio Brown. I hope to God they stay away from that. They've already got enough of a circus with their new quarterback coming into town. But one that really interested me here was his former teammate, Will Fuller. Do you think Will Fuller would be a good fit because of the chemistry that he's got with Deshaun Watson in this offense? And would Jarvis Landry and specifically Will Fuller be fantasy relevant here with him?
I think so, because I look at the Browns depth chart. As it stands right now, this is obviously without the Jarvis Landry signing. They got Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Jamarcus Bradley, and Anthony Schwartz.
They have some room there.
You could be forgiven if you don't really know who Anthony Schwartz or Jamarcus Bradley are. So I think you throw in Will Fuller and Jarvis Landry, and you could have both of them immediately become relevant. Oh, I also forgot Jakeem Grant Sr. That is a name that people know. But
Miami.
I still think Will Fuller and Jarvis Landry would be very relevant.
Now, Amari Cooper and these 2 current free agents, so let's not forget that. If they were to join the Browns, where would you put their fantasy value right now at a wide receiver ranking? Wide receiver 1, 2, 3, or flex options?
Amari Cooper, I'm going to say high wide receiver 2, wide receiver 1. Jarvis, Landry, and Will Fuller, I'm thinking flats.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I'm thinking.
I really would be very interested in taking Will Fuller as a late round flyer, because I would love the upside of him playing with him again. So that would be absolutely fantastic. We have someone from the Heckling fandom here. Team Region, if you have not seen the show before, the cost of admission is liking and subscribing to the show. So I would love to answer your question, though. And Brian, I guess, will too. What's your thoughts on the Bears? Wild card, remaining free agency, Tyron Wagner. So thoughts on the Bears are, I think they still need to make a few moves, specifically at wide receiver. They did not sign the Green Bay wide receiver that I think was initially wanted. That guy is still out there. I really don't see them as a wild card team, even with the depletion of quarterbacks in the NFC. I think they still got to make some moves here. I think the best move the Bears could make would be packaging those 2 second-round picks and bringing in Olave, which their starting quarterback has a lot of familiarity with. And I think that would be the best fit for fantasy football. You're going to be right on the cusp of the wild card, but I don't think this is going to be your year. I mean, there's still some free agency wide receivers. I mean, Odell's out there. I don't think you want to bark up that tree. The ACL's off. As we've said, Ryan, what's the name of the Green Bay Packer? Scantling is still out there, and
Yep,
I think
MVS.
they were initially still interested in him. I think he would be an interesting add and a good team target for Justin Fields. So I think that could be good. What's your thoughts on the Bears, Ryan?
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything you said. The Bears, they're you got the Lions and Vikings who are beatable, but you also got the Packers hanging right there. But then you got, as far as a wild card, you got some beasts in that conference. I mean, you have Tampa Bay, the Cardinals, the Rams,
The 49ers.
The 49ers.
Unfortunately, you can't cut out the Vikings or the Packers either. The Vikings made a good signing at outside linebacker. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's going to take the Panthers if they get Jimmy G. I don't know what they're doing. Saints went and signed Jameis Winston, so we'll see how that turns out. So there's still some solid. It's going to take a good season to get the wild card in that conference.
And unfortunately, I don't see Wagner joining the back end of that defense either, because I think he's still flirting with the Cowboys, and I likely think that's where he's going to end up going. So, Ryan, did you want to finish up your thoughts about Deshaun Watson?
Yeah. So they threw the bag at him. I think it does help the wide. I think it helps everyone on that team. I am surprised his cap hit. I don't know how they structured his salary cap. Cap management confuses me. I'm not that smart.
Well,
but
they really limited it on the first year because they're sketchy as shit and think he's going to get suspended for the first year. So that would really scrub out the amount of salary he's going to have to give out. And the money's backloaded in the contract there. So like you said, they're really taking their chances. And T Region here with another comment says, subbed and like, very underrated podcast. Love how you responded. I love also Rodgers ain't have any WDS to throw to. So yeah, that's a good thing too. And the weapon of mass destruction is now with the Raiders too. So keep that in mind.
And JJ is our region Bears fan. He's also very happy about that. So he's right there with you.
We will be having another show this Saturday where he will be doing the mock draft with us. So if you've got more Bears questions for him, that's the direction you want to bring those questions. So tune in Saturday for our first mock draft. Something else I'm interrupting the shit out of you. Go ahead.
It's all right. So Deshaun Watson only has a $10 million cap hit this year. Baker has an $18 million, but if they trade him, it's zero cap hit. So they could clear up some real money. If they get him traded. So they're not looking bad this year, but like you alluded to, you are going to have to pay up that money at some point. So they're in win now mode.
This confused the shit out of me, and I brought this up in our group chat too. Why in the world didn't the Texans look to take Baker Mayfield on and potentially flip him for some more picks too? They initially couldn't have thought that maybe he couldn't have gone to the Colts. Are they just not that threatened to him? Because first off, acquiring him in the trade would have prevented him from going to the Colts. Not that he went there. He went into another team that we'll get into. The Colts acquired another quarterback, I'm sorry, that we'll get into very shortly. But you're preventing him from going to a division opponent, and you probably could have acquired something like a second and a fourth round pick, a similar package that the Jets got for Sam Darnold last year. Would have kept him out of an enemy's hands, and you would have gotten more picks, which that team needs to reload. So the Browns are going to get to acquire some picks back, no matter where Baker Mayfield goes. I'm not quite sure where that's going to be. There's some teams still with a need at quarterback. Panthers, Seahawks, the Saints could still use one, even though they got Jameis Winston. Steelers are not going to do that. They are in the division, but there are some options out there for teams that need quarterbacks. So stay tuned to the wheel of where Baker Mayfield's going to go, because he's handing over the stadium keys to another quarterback, and he's going to be elsewhere. Before we get into the other quarterbacks on this carousel that are moving in free agency, though, Ryan, what do you think it's going to do for this Cleveland running game now that a new man's in town?
I was actually just about to ask you that, because as we all know, Deshaun Watson, he can scramble. But you do have Kareem Hunt and
Nick Chubb.
Nick Chubb.
You a little tired over there?
Yeah, they can catch the ball, so you might see some checkdowns to him, but I don't know. Do you think the rushing ability of Deshaun takes away? I guess what I always worry about with rushing quarterbacks is that red zone work that they can kind of steal once you get inside that 5.
No, honestly, I think that he's another threat that the defenses are going to have to account for. I think this is actually going to help their rushing game, and I think this is going to be a rush-first offense. I believe they're going to bring in more wide receivers, specifically the ones that we've already mentioned, to give him the plethora of weapons that he wants. But he opens up so many facets of this offense that simply Baker Mayfield cannot do. So regardless of those suspensions, if Jacoby Brissett, which they recently signed, who plays a similar style, plays a few games, I think Deshaun Watson's in for a good fantasy year should he play the majority of the games this year. So I think it's good for the running game, and I think those running backs have a high ceiling now in that Browns offense. So stay tuned for that. Now, let's move to the other trade that just happened on Monday after the Deshaun Watson chip fell. Matt Ryan has been traded to the Indianapolis Colts, and this led to Mariota also being signed to Atlanta. So what do these two moves do for the Colts and the Falcons going forward?
Yeah, so I think the Colts, it ups their wide receiver value. Michael Pittman's coming off a strong season that JJ kind of predicted. I think you could see him have another solid year. I would really like Paris Campbell to kind of turn it on. He hasn't really. What is he going into his 3rd year now?
He's still young.
Yeah, he hasn't developed the way they want, but I think maybe getting a quarterback like Matt Ryan back there could help. And then obviously you still have Jonathan Taylor, who's just an animal. Got Naheem Hines. Not a ton of big name wide receivers on that team, so it'll be interesting what they do there. And then they do have Mo Cox at tight end.
Mo Cox is actually did he resign? I don't believe he did yet.
I thought, oh, okay. Maybe he didn't. So I feel like the Colts are going to want to get a little bit more weapons from Matt Ryan, but I do like Michael Pittman this year.
Any chance Julio Jones is going to rejoin him in Indianapolis?
I could see that, yeah, and that would be a good move.
What do you see specifically these two quarterbacks' fantasy value being at? Well, being Deshaun Watson and Matt Ryan. Where do they fall in redraft leagues and superflex leagues? Quarterback 1s, quarterback 2s, unusable.
Yeah. So one-sided. So Matt Ryan, as far as fantasy value, had a pretty pedestrian year. I think he ranked as quarterback 20, despite having. I mean, the Falcons had a lot of weapons there. So I'm gonna put, and then if Deshaun Watson plays all year, let's go with he plays all year. I think Deshaun Watson, quarterback 1. I think Matt Ryan's more of a QB2 super flats kind of guy.
Yeah, Matt Ryan, I think, is a QB2 in superflex leagues. I think, obviously, the Indianapolis Colts are going to look to continue handing the ball to their bell cow, Jonathan Taylor, who is a top 3 running back option this year. I would argue top 2. I think there's someone that'll still finish on top of him, but that's a story for another day. It's definitely an interesting fit. He's the game manager that they've been looking for, and I think he is an excellent fit there and an even better fit than Baker Mayfield. Now, Mariota is with the Falcons. Is he going to ultimately be the starter for the Falcons this year, or is he just a fill-in?
Yeah, so
it's interesting as hell to think about.
It makes me think that like Arthur Smith really wanted him, and I know that I know the Falcons took on a boatload of dead money on Matt Ryan. I think it's like $40 million. So I don't know their cap situation a ton, but I almost wonder if like Mariota is basically what they were able to afford.
$40 million in dead cap sure as shit won't help that.
Yeah, like that is insane And like I said, I think they did basically what the Browns did. They ticked off. Yeah, so right now the Falcons are, according to Over the Cap, they're $250,000 over right now.
Over
And that's
40,
with the
huh?
Mariota.
Ron, stop interrupting us. That's really rude. Like, you need to stop doing that. That's my job to
And
interrupt Ryan.
And that's with the Mariota signing. So I think really the dead cap by Matt Ryan has just put them up against the wall. And I do think they're probably going to run with Mariota.
Yeah. You've got nothing to say to Ron? He's trying to interject his opinion and talk right over the top of you. It's so rude.
These ghosts just pop up whenever they want. I mean, I think the ghost has provided more insight than Ron usually does on a solid night. So
That might be.
What are your thoughts? Do you think Mariota's their guy?
I think Mariota's going to open up the season. I think they're going to look to draft a quarterback in the top 10. And I think that could be, and I keep saying it, might be Malik Willis, although there's a kid from Pittsburgh there too. Malik Willis is a little bit more of a project, and I think they want to bring Mariota in, who is a similar style of quarterback, which is why I think they were looking at him. Malik Willis would work in the same style of offense that they're looking to play with too. So I think it would be a great fit for them. Mariota could start. Malik Willis would sit on the bench, and you bring him in when he's comfortable. He's more of a project, and it would be a great fit. Mariota's got some interesting value for fantasy football, even if he keeps a job for a while, because of that rushing ability. There's not a lot of weapons there, and he's going to have to deal with just having Cordell Patterson. But the Falcons are really lacking, and obviously they are now in rebuild.
Yeah, when you put yourself, so looking really quick, they actually this year they're carrying $60 million in dead cap, $40 million of that being Matt Ryan, and another 15 in Julio. When you have that much dead cap,
damn it, Ron, stop doing that.
It's really hard to kind of get any big free agency signings or weapons. So,
agreed. All right, now let's move away from the quarterbacks for a little bit here. Wasn't there a certain Green Bay wide receiver traded on Friday that we should probably get into? Maybe the number one wide receiver in the league.
Yeah, so Davante Adams to the Raiders, and the Raiders paid up. Not paid up as far as draft capital.
They got a hell of a deal, I think, for him.
The contract they signed. Yeah, what did they even for a first round pick and a second round pick?
Yep. Which
so
I think
that,
is excellent value.
As far as trade goes, I agree. I think that was a very good trade value. They paid him a crazy contract. What do you think of giving even though it's Davante Adams, a wide receiver at his age, that type of contract?
He is a former teammate with Derek Carr. He is proven to be a valuable commodity. I don't give a shit what I do not give a shit what I would have to pay for Davante Adams. I would pay him whatever he wanted, 30, 35 million. The salary cap has been shown this offseason to be a mirage. You can move numbers around to make things work. He flat out told the Packers that no, even though they offered him more money and with taxes, it would have worked out to be the same and he would have remained with Aaron Rodgers. He wanted to go play with Derek Carr and the Raiders. That was the only move he was willing to do, and Aaron Rodgers was fine with it, which is odd enough. I thought he would have thrown a temper tantrum with that, but they already had him locked up with a ton of money. So obviously money solves a lot of issues for Davante Adams and for Aaron Rodgers. Getting back to the point, though, him with the Raiders, still an excellent fit. Carr's familiar with him. They needed a number one. I don't see his value dropping off at all. I think he's going to remain, at this point, a top 3 wide receiver for fantasy football for at least the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and then you look at the Raiders now. Derek Carr, I think it could be set up to have a great season. I mean, you got Davante Adams here. You got Hunter Renfrow, who really came out last year.
Mm-hmm.
Then you got Brian Edwards, and then you still got Darren Waller, who I think for some people didn't live up to expectations based on where he was drafted.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't have much else to work with. And I know there are some injuries there, so it's going to be a solid team this year. And I think Davante Adams possibly taking away some of the defense could really help out Darren Waller and Hunter Renfrow.
I agree with all those sentiments. All right, so there is also a lot of news too. So let's pile through it too. Leonard Fournette earlier in this week was visiting with the Patriots and wanted to join the stable, and then he turns around and signed with the Bucks. What's his fantasy value back with the Bucks, and how disappointed are you?
I'm not like super disappointed just because like Bill Belichick with running backs is just going to do that. As far as him going back to Tampa Bay, that's the good old Tom Brady effect. And I'm going to put him pretty much right where he was at last year. I don't think much changes with that team, seeing as how they've gotten so many of their players back. He was number 6 running back last year, so I think you see him top 10. I don't really know. I don't think he breaks top 5, but I could see him top 10 again.
What do you see his dynasty value being for the foregiven future? Is it good with Tom Brady? What if Tom Brady leaves after this year? Is he still highly valuable?
No, I think once Tom Brady leaves, it's going to go down quite a lot. He's 27, pretty old for a running back. So you figure by the end of this year, it'd be 28. Yeah.
Okay. Lyle Collins also signed with the Bengals, and they have been working on that offensive line for the last week. What is Joe Mixon's outlooks now that Lyle Collins is on this offensive line? Is he going even higher up in drafts this upcoming year?
I think so. Very happy because I have Joe Mixon on my team. Rushed for 1,200 yards last season with a terrible offensive line. And also 13 touchdowns. So, yeah, he's going to be top 5 running back.
I can see him falling into that range. I think his range is somewhere between 5 to 8. Definitely a first-round value this year. We just need to see him stay healthy, too. Also, Jackson Mahomes has got competition for the TikTok champion of the Kansas City Chiefs. Juju Smith-Schuster is in the house. Who's going to have the better TikToks, and what's Juju Smith-Schuster's fantasy value?
I hate both of their TikToks. I think some of Juju's antics that were a distraction on
similar to this.
Yeah, on the Steelers will be a less of a distraction on Kansas City just because there's so many good players and big personalities there. But look at this receiving core now. You got Tyreek Hill, Juju Smith-Schuster, Mecole Hardman, Josh Gordon. I mean, then you still got Travis Kelce at tight end. There's going to be a lot to go around there. Do you see anyone being the odd man out? Do you think they all get pretty solid value? Are you expecting a rise in one and a dip in another?
Obviously, I see, and some people may disagree, I don't think we see any dip in Travis Kelce this year. I think he will continue to do what he has done. Tyreek Hill is a beast and is going to be a top 5 wide receiver again this year, killing people in the playoffs like he killed me last year. Now, the interesting question here, because I think Juju Smith-Schuster immediately drops into the wide receiver 2 position for the Chiefs, is will he break the curse of being in value? The Chiefs' wide receiver 2 position has been very unvaluable for fantasy football. Josh Gordon tried to fix that. All their other options have tried to fix that. Anyone they brought in, and nobody has been successful in that. Sammy Watkins, it just hasn't worked. I think Juju Smith-Schuster is going to be the one to break that curse and be highly valuable for fantasy football. He doesn't have to be the number 1 here like he was with the Steelers initially.
He has a quarterback that's not Big Ben.
Absolutely. He's got Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback now. If he can stop with the bullshit antics, get back to work, and play like the talented young wide receiver he is, his roof is unlimited here. It's a great fit for him, and I would be willing to take a pretty high flyer on Juju Smith-Schuster in Dynasty trades this year and in redraft leagues. I absolutely love this fit. Like I said, just stay away from Jackson Mahomes.
So, no concerns. So, Juju hasn't had a season over 1,000 yards since 2018.
Correct.
Only played 5 games last season. Is yet to ever break 10 touchdowns in a season. But you're still thinking high value?
I see the potential for high value. I'm not saying it's going to happen because
Wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2?
Wide receiver 2 with
safely
wide receiver 2.
Okay.
Lower end wide receiver 2 with upside of being a higher end wide receiver 2 because, like we said, there's already 2 talented weapons there with Tyreek and Travis Kelce. He's got to fucking stay away from the antics. So, and God, he's so talented. So if I don't see him have a good year, it's going to piss me right off. Dude, stay
I agree.
concentrated and play well because you're going into free agency again next year and you can get a loaded contract if you play well next year and show off, which I think he can do. With that, let's move on to another wide receiver 2. Robert Woods was traded to the Titans after Julio Jones was released for a 6th-round pick, so that is hell of value, even with the ACL injury, which doesn't seem to be a big concern for teams anymore. What do you think Robert Woods' value is with the Titans taking over Julio Jones's role and A.J. Brown being on the other side and the Sasquatch in the backfield?
Yeah, so I liked this trade for the Titans. Would they give up like a 5th?
A 6th.
A 6th. So I think the trade is great for them. I'm excited for Robert Woods. I think on the Rams, he was going to really start to fall in the backfield a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if they bring back OBJ. I don't know if they're going to, but if they do. So I really like him on the Titans, like you said, alongside A.J. Brown. Then you got Robert Woods, and then Nick Westbrook-Ikini. So Robert Woods is definitely the wide receiver 2 in that offense automatically.
Mm-hmm.
And
where you drafting him? That's the real question.
Definitely not too early. 5th? Is that too late?
No, that's not too late for him. I think that's decent value for him. And you still have to be concerned coming out the ACL. The team is not concerned. They've got enough weapons there to survive at least while he's getting back on tread and on pace coming off the ACL. I think where you'll see the value with him is later in the fantasy year. But I like this fit for him. I don't know if I'd even take him in the 5th, maybe the 7th to 8th round. But we'll see where he is later on in the year when training camp rolls around and if his value gets inflated. I change my mind on that because that is a likely scenario. Gerald Everett also got signed by a team on the West Coast. Not that the Titans are a team on the West Coast, but I needed a weird transition. 2-year deal with the Los Angeles Chargers. Is he going to jump into tight end 1 position with the Chargers, and is he going to have fantasy value there? Or is this insignificant to you?
I'm going to say no. I'm staying away from it. As far as me for tight ends, unless I feel like it's either you go hard and take one of those top guys, or you just wait and scrape the bottom of the barrel.
So you feel like they're scraping the bottom of the barrel?
I don't know if I feel like that exactly, but I just don't think they use their tight ends that often. There's just so much more. There's just so many names before him that I'd go with.
Okay, we'll skate right over that then. What's your thoughts on Rashad Penny resigning with the Seahawks? Does this absolutely kill Carson's value? Is Rashad Penny right into the starting role?
A part of me thinks no. Like, I don't know why, but I feel like Carson's just trying to come back and, if he's healthy, be the RB1. Now, that's a big if when it comes to health with Carson. Or I almost see it being a split backfield, so I don't love it.
You love it almost as much as Drew Lock starting for that team.
Yes, precisely.
So is this a backfield for fantasy football that you're just completely staying away from? Even though we saw what Rashad Penny did?
I think the Seahawks just in general are a team. Because as you alluded to in another episode, I forget what team it was, but the passing threat's not really going to be there, I don't think, at least initially.
Not unless they bring in another QB, which Drew Lock is not that long-term QB, I don't believe. In some more insignificant news, Duke Johnson is added to that backfield committee of the Bills after J.D. McKissic told him to screw off. Is this just going to ruin the committee even more with the Bills, and are we staying away from Singletary and Moss again next year?
What annoys me is when I saw the Bills were looking at McKissic, I was like, what the heck? Because it seemed like Singletary towards the end of the season was really stepping into that role and could be the main back of that team, but it just seems like that's not what they want. They want a committee. So I'm going to stay away from both of them, I think.
Okay. And a bunch of other news that we've got here, too. Jamison Crowder signed with the Bills. Slot role, obviously replacing Cole Beasley, I believe. Is there any fantasy value here, or is he just too far down the depth chart to be valuable next year?
More than he had on the Jets.
That's if he doesn't stay not injured, which is why we didn't re-sign him. Terod Armstead, good tackle from the Saints, is now with the Miami Dolphins. Is this going to help with their bullshit committee running backfield?
I don't think it's going to help enough to really feel comfortable having any of those Miami running backs. I think drafting one of them would almost be a late round snag and see if it works out during the season, or maybe go to the waiver wire after.
Late round flyer show. Here we come. Bill's backfield and Miami's backfield.
Yeah. I just know that Gaskin value is just
fucking plummeted
in the sewers right now.
Well, yeah, when you add two other running backs to that backfield, that'll happen. In some other news too, we have a lot of extensions. We already talked about Cordell Patterson getting his $10.5 million over 2 years in Atlanta. That is Ron Seymour's kryptonite, so he's staying away from him. I am not looking at him until later rounds. Ryan, do you concur?
Yep.
All right, we'll move on from that. Interestingly, the Denver Broncos have given a little bit of money and bonuses to both Tim Patrick and Cortland Sutton, restructuring their deals. Are they trying to get under the salary cap, or do you think they're looking to make another move here?
I think just stay under the salary cap. I'm not sure where their salary cap is at right now. Let's see. But my biggest concern with Cortland Sutton is it seems like when Judy finally became healthy, you pretty much saw Sutton's value plummet pretty significantly. The Broncos have $21 million in cap space right now, so I don't know what big move they'd be preparing for, but they definitely got the money.
For now, anyway. And finally, the last little bit of news, unless you got something for us too. One of JJ's favorite quarterbacks, Jameis Winston, has re-signed with the Saints. Is there any fantasy value here? And are you ready for him to be league MVP?
Yes and yes. I think because Jameis Winston's always going to have that rushing ability. And the Saints are kind of in a weird spot as far as cap space and things like that. Let's see. I just want to look at. I mean, so Jameis Winston he played weeks 1 through 8. He at least saw some pass attempts and things like that. So of those 8 weeks, 1 week was a bye week. So in 7 games, he had 2 games over 25 points, and then 2 games over 3 games over like 10. QB2, I guess, in a super flex.
And in redraft, that would be somebody get off the waivers. So unneeded in that format, but interesting for Dynasty because quarterbacks are very important in Superflex Dynasty leagues. And how the hell can I forget? We didn't even cover the fact that the Rams signed Allen Robinson. That's the reason why Robert Woods left the Rams. So what is Allen Robinson and what is Allen Robinson's value alongside Cooper Kupp, and is Odell Beckham coming back?
I almost think that the Allen Robinson signing
is a perfect question for JJ.
Made me feel like OBJ is not coming back.
Interesting. If that's a scenario, what is Allen Robinson's fantasy value?
So super pass heavy offense.
Yep.
It'll depend a lot on if Cooper Kupp comes out and looks like he did last year.
He will.
I'm gonna say a flex, like probably what Robert Woods was before he got injured. Like I'm gonna say a flex.
Really, a flex? That's where all you're putting him at? I'm putting him at a wide receiver too. I understand he didn't perform with the Bears, but that was for a lack of effort. I believe he didn't want to be there. JJ would tell you he didn't want to be there in redraft. I would be more than happy to draft him next year, specifically on the offense that he's going to be on. Dynasty, I don't think I would have much interest in him. He's kind of getting up there in age, but I think he's going to be motivated to win a Super Bowl next year. They threw quite a bit of money at him. I believe it was $15 million a year. So he's paid. He's on a good offense, and that bullshit attitude should disappear. And believe it or not, I think they will re-sign Odell Beckham. So I think Odell Beckham is going to be the third wide receiver in that Rams offense and actually be the flex option in fantasy football. So that's where I'm at with these wide receivers. Cooper Kupp being probably the top fantasy wide receiver, along with Justin Jefferson and our boy up there with the Raiders. I see this new signing being a wide receiver 2 and Odell being a flex.
Interesting. All right.
Ryan, do you have any other news you'd like to get into for the heckling fandom?
Did we cover Carson Wentz at all?
Hell no, we didn't cover Carson Wentz, but if you have some thoughts on it, go ahead.
Yeah, so you have Carson Wentz going to Washington. Got shipped out of Indy. Terry McLaurin, I think, is just gonna he's a freak. He's still gonna do well.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you rank Curtis Samuel's value? He's been pretty up and down. And then also the good old committee that we touched on a little bit of Antonio Gibson and J.D. McKissic. What are your thoughts there?
Antonio Gibson, I think, is a running back 2, a low-end running back 2 with the ability to completely fall off the radar, so he scares the shit out of me. J.D. McKissic is a flex option on given weeks, depending on the offense they're playing. If the screen game works very well against them, I like Terry McLaurin next week. I think Carson Wentz typically likes to target one player, and that would be the player that he would target. I am not
just
interested.
Like Michael Pittman last year.
Exactly, and I am not interested in any other wide receivers from the Washington Commanders. That's just not an avenue I want to go down. They would only be better if they brought back Jeremy Sprinkles. That's really the only option. But he signed with the Cowboys. Team MVP next year.
I agree with all of that.
All right. Anything else you'd like to bring up since you seem to be full of knowledge tonight?
Nah, man. I think we crushed it. Like you mentioned, there's still some free agents out there, so there'll still be some decent signings.
Valdez-Scantling is still out there, and one of our resident Bears fans of the heckling fandom, I think is looking forward to that signing. And JJ, maybe we'll see.
They got MVS and OBJ out there. I think finally, the shoe that everyone was waiting to drop was Deshaun Watson. So, and as expected, then you saw a bunch of moves right after that. So I'm thinking we could see OBJ and MVS end up getting signed pretty soon. Do you think it hurts these guys who end up not being signed until week 3 or 4 of free agency after all the big money is spent?
No, not necessarily. I don't ever look for that being a problem. I mean, it may hurt their wallet a little bit, but teams sometimes look to bargain shop. That's where New England gets all their talent. So I don't think it's an
I
issue.
love it. Hey, I
Yeah.
wouldn't mind New England getting OBJ. Let's do it.
Yeah.
He almost went to us.
It'd be an interesting fantasy fit. I guess a Patriots fan could dream now that the boy's gone. Oh, how
Yeah,
rude of
right?
me. I forgot before we got out of here. I forgot to ask the ghost of Ron Seymour if he had anything else to add to the show. All right, thanks for that, Ron. That was some
very in-depth
enlightening advice. You can now go back to the dark corner that you're hiding in. Probably
Show
a lazy boy seat.
him.
Absolutely. All right, guys. If you like this show, like we've said before, like and subscribe to us here on YouTube. Go to our website at www.garbagetimeff.com, where you can leave us voice and hate mails. And once in a while, you'll see Ron Seymour on this show. JJ should be back with us on Saturday. We're going to do a mock draft, or we're going to try to do a mock draft at 1 p.m. We're horrible with our scheduling, so no promises. But we will get a mock draft to you on our next episode. Look for that to be this weekend. We'll see if the ghost of Ron Seymour or Ron Seymour joins us this week. Leave us voicemails and hate mails, as I've said. You can listen to the show in podcast format if you're on the road too, on Apple, Google, Tunein, Iheartradio, Amazon. Also, the link on the website, as we've already said, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts too. Ryan, anything to say to the heckling fandom before we get out of here?
No, I think you covered it. Just that pretty soon we may be looking to get Ron's picture on some milk cartons, see if anyone's seen him. So if you happen to know his whereabouts, feel free to let us know. Just let us know that he's okay.
Where in the world is Ron Seymour?
We're not sure if it's him messaging us anymore. We haven't seen a face in quite some time. He's been turning down some decent trade offers, so just let us know that you're okay, Ron.
At least he's active in the fantasy league. Also, guys, if you're shy and don't want to leave comments for the live shows, which we will answer on the show, as one of the heckling fandom found out tonight, you can leave comments or messages on the Twitter at @garbagetime_timeff or at Garbage Time Fantasy Football on Instagram. With that, guys, we hope you and the ghost of Ron Seymour have an excellent night.